I'm sure some of you can relate to the story that I'm about to tell. It's 2013, you're 12 years old, just perusing around YouTube, when you stumbled upon a fun little video you wanted to check out. The advertisement comes on, and this is what you're blessed with.
You little brat, don't skip it, don't skip it, don't skip it, don't skip it. There was something in the woods.
Yeah, needless to say, I avoided this movie for years before I was finally able to muster up the courage to conquer this fear and watch this movie. And boy, when I tell you I couldn't stop showing all of my friends this movie just to see their reactions. It was honestly one of the horror movies that inspired me to start wanting to make them. Only a bit later I would soon discover the existence of the original trilogy. Once I saw Sam Raimi was the director, I knew that this was going to be something special. While this video isn't really about the original trilogy, I'll give my thoughts on them real quick. I unfortunately wasn't the biggest fan of The Evil Dead. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate the hell out of it, but it's one of those movies that I don't think aged very well and it's hard to get over. Evil Dead 2 on the other hand is fantastic, and I thought the horror elements mixed with the wackiness of its execution was so refreshing to see. Army of Darkness definitely goes further with the wackiness and doesn't really have any horror at all, but I still really loved it. Ash vs. Evil Dead was a great continuation. I'm still very upset that I got cancelled, but I don't really mind the next adventure ending we got. However, the ride that we get taken on when watching Evil Dead 2013 has yet to be outmatched, even though I'm praying Evil Dead Rise takes us close. Evil Dead took the campiness horror that was so fun in the originals and turned them into actual nightmares. The violence is over the top, and the horror elements are at 100%. The original movies never took us this far before. Starting off with some negatives, because it's mostly been all praise about this remake. I will say the movie suffers the same fate that The Evil Dead had, where it takes a while to get going. And by a while, I do honestly mean only about 30 minutes, but it's 30 minutes of one-note characters arguing over one-note things. I do like the whole addiction storyline, but other than that, they don't really do much. And don't get me started on the guy who reads aloud from the book. At least in the previous movies, they play it on tape without knowing what it is. But boy, once those 30 minutes are up, the movie just doesn't stop moving. It's possession after possession after possession, and it's very, very violent. The originals could get bloody and violent, but this is disgusting, and I loved it. I'm not sure what it is because I'm not normally one to like gore, but with this movie there were times it felt more like action, and it was cool to watch. It's crazy because while the premises are so similar, the tone and execution alone make it feel like its own movie, but still carries what makes an Evil Dead movie. Each time a character gets possessed, you just know you're in for some wild shit. So even though the characters are pretty bland, we get some good use out of them later on. It's amazing how much of a staple even the camera work has, letting us know that this is still a part of that original series. It's probably because the movies were just old, but I can't really imagine anyone watching The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 and actually getting scared. Sure, while they are still technically horror movies, there is still something about them that makes them unique out of the rest. It's not bad that they aren't necessarily scary, but everything that they are doing is still effective. However, this remake I can definitely see many people being frightened by. It's in your face most of the time, and it's a lot. There are still scenes where I need to look away. We have recently been getting a bit more visual horror movies lately, actually scaring us with what we're seeing on screen, and I for one am glad, because there should always be room for crowd pleasers. It's pretty impressive that for such a bad rap that these horror movies remakes get, this one manages to stand atop and be one of the few that actually elevated the original experience into something far more must-be-seen to be believed. I can't think of another remake, especially out of a horror movie, that has managed to do what this one has. I don't want to take anything away from the director, but it's refreshing to see that Sam Raimi worked so closely on it, and I would be curious to know how much he contributed to maybe story or some specific scenes. I feel like the last point I wanted to make here, which kind of ties back to what I said earlier, and that's the fact that the original trilogy has such an inspiring filmmaker's story behind it, and it'd be very hard to argue that it didn't inspire many other people to take a crack at the craft. And I feel like this remake was able to reignite that spark of inspiration to the generation that saw it. I'm hoping Evil Dead Rise is able to do the same after 10 years. That trailer has me really excited, however, to see what other awful shit they're going to make me see.